How are you, dear students? I hope you are all fine. Uh, for the new lecture, we are going to talk about arrays. So let's go to here. Let's go to the code. What do we need? First of all, we need an include hash include iStream using name space std, which stands for standard library, and then integer main. After that, I need return 0, and then system equals. Okay, nice. So we need these things. Okay. So how we can start? We can start with an example of many students inside a class. So how many students we have inside a class? Let's say we have, let's say 25 students. 25 students. So each student has an ID. Let's say student ID. Each student, let's say, have a name, and each student has an age, different age, and each student is coming from different cities maybe. And so what else we have? Name, student ID, name, age, city, and then in which grade he is. So each student has something like this. So if I want to, let's say, student ID is an integer and name is a string, age is an integer, city is a string, grade is an integer. Okay, so you see this. Let's say, let's make these be together, and this one as well, to make all integers together and all strings together. Okay, you can see right now, for each student, I need an ID, a special ID. I need a special age. I need a special grade. And for string S. And they all have different name, and they all are coming from different cities. If I want to insert them, I can simply say okay. So I have, let's say, for student one, I need all these things. And for student two, I need all these things again. And then their names, let's just delete this one. And the name of the variable should always change, because we cannot have the same name declared like this. So student ID 1, age 1, grade for student 1, and the name for student 1, city for student 1. And then integer student 2, age 2, grade 2, and then student name 2, city 2. This is for the second student, okay? For the third student, I need to have the same thing. So student number 3, student ID for third student, age 3, and then grade 3, and then name 3, city 3. So this means that these are for the student number 3. And we need 25 piece of information for 25 students. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines for each student. For 25 students, we have So I need 125 lines of code for 25 students. Yeah. So I need 125 lines of code. Lines of code. Okay. So I need that much amount of code for 25 students because each student is having 5 pieces of information. This is without inserting their name. This is only declaring the variables. Just declaring the variables needs 125 lines of code. And if I want to initialize them, I need to initialize one by one. So I need this much amount for what 125 line of code for 25 students. Let's say initialization, and this one is declaration without the cout. This is directly I am writing the names and everything directly. I mean, I will know everything without any cout and stuff. If I put cout for each of them, what else I need? I need this much more amount of line for 25 student for cout to direct to insert info for 25 students. So these are couts just to say, please enter his name. So entering name for the student one, entering name, let's say H for student one, student ID for student one. Then I need 5 more line for the student number two. Then I need 4. So it's how many times? 375 lines of code just to insert information for 25 students. Okay, so this is a huge number of code I'm writing, and this is much more confusing. What I can do here, the power of array is coming. The array is coming um, to get rid of all the informations of same objects. Let's say each student is an object, so we have 25 same objects. They have the same thing, but their names, the name of the variable is changing. So for each if there was the same objects, if it is 25 or 1,000 objects, an array will be used, which means that a set of information for each object. Okay, let me make this one how we can write it. I mean, how we can do it. For example, I can say, okay, let's say, what can I do for this piece of information? I can have maybe 5 arrays. 5 arrays. Let's look at this and let's understand it like this. I can have, these are the pieces of information an array has. So an array is a list of information. According to what I have in the code, I can either say that for each information, I can create a list of array. Let's say this is for an array, a list of information for the IDs, a list of information for the ages, a list of information for the grades, and a list of information for the names, list of information for the cities. And then I will say all the first element belong to the first object. All the second element belong to the second student. All the third element, or the third, let's say the third place is for the third student. So you see that this list, the array is simply a list, is having a name, and I am able to call the first place of this list by 0, and the second place of this list by 1, and the third place of this list by 2. So I simply can say student 1 is having the 0 places of all the arrays I have. If I have, let's say, if I copy this and I paste it, what will I get? Let's just Control C and Control V. It's not showing me anything. Okay. So what I will do, I'm going to here, I'm going to show you, just make you understand what I mean by this. So this is a list of information. This is a very simple thing I'm doing. We can, like, if there's a mistake here, we can fix it in the future. But this is just only for the purpose of teaching. I'm going to use this way. So this is the whole information I had. And what I have, I'm having student one, let's say, student one. And I'm going to put the student one here. So this is ID, student STD ID. So this is student ID, and I'm going to copy and paste this. This is what? This is student age. And this is what? This is grade. Yeah, this is grade. Let's say average. Grade. And this is what? Let's copy this one. And this is name. And this is city. Okay, nice. I'm going to copy these things as well. I'm copying it and I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to put it at the below. Okay. So this is the ID for the student one, let's say one. And this is ID for student two, ID for student three, then four, and then five. So these are their IDs. And age, let's say 12, and 12, let's say make this one 13, and 14, and then 12. And the grade, let's say 3, 3, 3, and 4, and then 4. And their names is AA, BB, and then CC, then DD, and EE. So these are the names, and the cities SS, EE, and Hook, let's say Kirkuk, and what else? Let's say Baghdad. Okay. So you see that if I want all the informations of the first student, I can say that the first student's ID is 1, the age is 12, the grade is 3, the name is AA, and the city is SS. The second student's ID is 2, 12, 3, BB, and E. You see that this makes the whole, what was the number of the lines of code I had? Too much, let's say, how was it? 103 times 3, 125. So it was 375 student lines of code became this table. So it's very easier for me right now to work with this table more than working with a lot of information, which is very confusing, even if I wanted to change it. So if I want to change the first student's elements, I simply change this one into 13. But searching among all the students and then changing the value of the student one is taking your time, and it's not manageable. Okay, it is not flexible at all. So this is known as array. So the first part of the list, which is an array, is known as element 0, index 0. And this one is index 1, and this one is index 2, index 3, index 4. So I'm able to insert any kind of information in any index I have, and I'm able to see out any information at any index I have. Okay, so I hope it is clear. So let me make this example a bit, yeah, let's copy this one. and I'm going to take it out. For the next time, I'm going to apply this. Is this control key, this problem? But for right now, what I'm doing is I'm going to uh, create an array of the same thing. We have to pay attention that all the elements of the same list should be the same type. So this student ID are all integers, this age are all integers, and so on and so on. Okay, if I delete this one, and if I say I have a student, let's say I make this one an array instead of writing Gregor and stuff and stuff. So I will say integer, and then first of all, let's go to the slides and see what I have. Uh, first of all, chapter 8 is about array from page 485 and to 534. Just have a look at it. It's very nice. It's declaring and like it talks about information in detail. Um, when I'm having an array, so an array is what a variable that can store multiple values of the same type. So an array, in fact, it's a list, and it's a variable at the same time that can store multiple values instead of, so variables, we were having only one value inside it, but array is storing multiple values of the same type. Values are stored in adjacent memory location. Adjacent means next to each other. So when you're creating an array, you are, let's say, occupying an amount of space in the memory. So this amount of memory, this amount of place will be taken from the memory directly. So this piece of information filled, then this one can be filled in the memory. They are adjacent to each other, next to each other. We can declare using this sign of operator. Okay, we can use this one. Let's say integer a5. Okay. In arrays, we are having zero index, the first place known as zero index, and then the first index, second, third, and fourth index. Okay, and this one is known as array length. So the size of the array known as array length. What's the array length right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's known as the size of the array is right now 5. Okay. Okay, before coming here, I'm going to say, just before that, let's create it first of all. So what's the type of the array right now? So the type of the array is an integer for the first time. I'm creating an array of integer. What's the name of the array? So I will simply say student ID. Okay, and I'm going to create these braces. Okay, and I'm going to give the size of the array. So I am saying 25 places and close it. So what did I do is this. I am having an array which is a kind of variable, which is a list if you want to understand it. So in our language, you can say a list of numbers, a list of something. So a list, which is composed of 25 places. And the type is an integer, and the name of these places are known as std ID, student ID. Okay, what is the information inside this student ID? Nothing. So we have created a place inside memory which is composed of 25 places like this, and the inside of these places is empty. There is nothing inside these places. So it's empty, but there is 25 places taken. Okay? Okay. So how I can feel this information? You may say that filling this information is the same as maybe having 25 lines? Because no, we have studied for loop, so I'm able to fill this array with a for loop. So I will say integer I equals to 1, and the length will be 25, and which is equals to I plus plus. Then I will say student ID, something like this, is equals to I, and then start. Okay. Okay. So what did I do right now? I'm counting from 1 until 25, and I'm going to fill this and this array. This array is composed of 25 places, but they are all empty. So how I can say, please put the first ID in the first place, put the second ID into the second place, put the third ID into the third place. So how I can do this? I simply say I. What this means is this. The array which I have, which is student ID, have 25 places. So in the first place, put 1. In the second place, put 2, because I will be incremented. So I is 1 at the first time. Is I smaller than 25? Yes. So student ID means array of the first index is equals to 1. Here, there's a problem. The problem is, you may think of the problem before it's happening. We are saying the array is starting from index 0. So what do I mean is this. If I wanted to put a variable, to put a value inside the first place, I should use the 0 index. What do I mean? I mean something like this. Before using the for loop. So I'm going to comment this out, Control K C, Control K and Control C. If I want to fill the information for the first index, I'm going to do something like this. Student for the 0 index is equals to 1. And I'm going to copy this and then copy this and like this. So student at 0 index is 1. ID of the student of the 1 index is 2 and 3 and then 4 and then 5. But you see the index of the array is one less than the value, because the arrays are always starting from 0 index. Array, let's say when we are counting something, we are saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When array starts counting something, it says 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0 is a number for array, okay? Just like 4 is a number, 0 is a number. So it starts from 0, not from 1. In my language, in any kind of numerical things, we are not counting 0. We are saying, okay, 0 is 0. It's nothing. But in arrays, 0 have a place, which is the first place. So that's why when I'm putting a value into the student, or into the first, let's say for the first student, the first student's address of the array is student ID 0. Clear? I hope it's clear. What's the value? But we are as a human, we cannot have a value of 0. Let's say a student which has a student ID 0 means it's not a student. So he should have a value of 1. And how I'm going to manage this? Well, we should do some tricks in order to manage this thing. Okay. So student ID 0, 1, student ID 1, 2. So you should understand by now what do I mean when there's a problem. I said there's a problem here. So I'm going to control and control U. When I say student I equals to I, this means that student ID 1 equals to 1. But I should say student ID 0 equals to 1. So I simply can say minus minus I or I minus 1. It depends on me, like, because if I say I minus 1, this means that the first time I equals to 1, this one becomes 0, this one is 1. Then I becomes 2. This one becomes 1 and this one becomes 2. And I becomes, let's say, 3. Then this one becomes I minus 1, which is 2, and then this one 3. So this one is the same as this one. So mathematically it's the same. Like I minus 1 equals to I. It's always this number minus 1. Look at that. It's always this number minus 1. 3 minus 1, 2. 4 minus 1, 3. And 5 minus 1, it is 4. So I'm able right now to, let's say, to insert all the information, to fill all the information of the student ID. So when I run this program, I'm able to fill the places of the array by, let's say these are the places of the array by 1, 2, 3, 4 until 25. But the indexes are 0 until 24. Yes. Okay. Then when I fill the array, what can I do? How I can be sure if the array element is working or not? In order to see the elements inside the array, I'm going to use another for loop. So this for loop is for what? I can use the same thing, integer I equals to maybe 1 or 0, I smaller than 25, and I plus plus, okay? We said the integer I, when I'm initializing an integer inside the parentheses, inside these things, curly braces of for loop, this I is dying here. I is dying here. So after that, if I wanted to use integer I should initialize I again, because it's born here and it's dying when the parentheses are closed. So the lifetime of this variable is between the parentheses here and here. So it dies after this line. That's why I'm able to use integer I again for another for loop when I'm let's say outputting the results of the array. So this for loop is the same I between 0 and less than 25. Here it was between 1 and 25 include, but here I'm saying 0 less than 25 because it's the same number, either 1 and 25 include or 0 and 1 less than 25. And I'm going to see out the array. So student ID. Student ID at which index? At 0 index or I index. So if I say the 0 index, it will 25 times, it will print only the value of the 0 index, which is 1. But if I say I, this means that I have places from 1 to 25. At first time, I is 0, so I'm going to print this one. And then I will be 1, and I'm going to print the value of this one. So this I becomes the index of the array. And when I'm saying student ID, I means that the value of the array which is having this index. What do I mean by index? Is this the address of the first element or the address of any of the elements of the array. Okay, and I'm going to give an maybe end line or a tab slash t. Okay, so I'm going to Control K, Control C. So you see how many lines of code I have. I have 1 line of code, 2, and then 3, 4, and 5. By 5 line of code, I have filled all the information of student ID, and I have outputted all the information of the student ID. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I'm able to fill the information into the array. What do I mean by this? If I control K, control comment, I'm going to comment this. If I want, suppose that there's nothing, you may not understand this one correctly. So if I want to see out the first element of the array, you may see this student ID and zero index. So I'm able to show the information, the ID of the zeros student. And if I want to show the ID of the second student, I will say 1. And if I want to show the information of the third student, I will say 2. Okay? So what do I mean by now by this is that 1, 2, 3. In fact, we have filled the information into the array. It is like 20. We have 25 animal, 25 variables right now, and I have initialized all the variables with a for loop. So it takes like so it was like it took too much amount of time for me. I didn't write many lines of code. Just see this. If I want to write even the information of the students manually, I'm unable to insert the informations one by one. It's always confusing to do it manually. But when I'm making this one automatically, look at this. 3 lines of code and it gets like it retrieves, it put many information inside the array and I get, I outputted many informations of the array from the array to the user. So this makes the equation or the problem more easier right now. So I'm able to see all the students right now, the ID of the students. Okay. Okay. So here I said 0, 1, 2, 3. So here 25 times this one is happening. So 25 times this one becomes 0 at the first time, then becomes 1, then becomes 2, then becomes 3, then becomes 4, then becomes 5. So 25 times this will happen and it will show me the information of the array totally. Okay, so this was for the first array, which is the student ID. And I can now show create another array for the age, for example. Okay, and I can another array for the grade. So let me create right now another array for the names, because just to make it a bit more meaningful, I should think about the name of the student. Otherwise, it like you may not understand it. Okay, so I'm having another array right now, string. With the type of the array is string, and the name of the array is array names. Okay, and I'm going to say this is as well 25 places. And because I'm using string, I'm going to, oops, I'm going to use string library. Okay, so I have used string for the array name, and what I'm doing, well, I should use a way to fill the information of the, let's not use this, to fill the information of the array of the student names. So how I can do this? Let's make this one not 25, let's say 5, and this one is 5 as well. So a for loop for the I will be filled automatically, and then I'm going to have a cout say that enter info for student number and then I'm going to say I, and then end line. So what I'm doing is this. I'm having two arrays. One of them is for the student ID, the other one is for the student name. So the student name will be inserted automatically. That's why I'm going to insert the student name myself. So array names, and for which student, for the 0, then the first one, then the second one, then so I should write I minus 1 as well. And I should make this one 5 and this one 5 as well. So instead of writing 5 and 5, I'm going to have a size, integer size equals to 5. So whenever I change this size, this will be changed as well. So it doesn't need like changing it 2 times. So first I'm going to make this one 6 and it becomes 6 in all of the others, in here and here as well. So I'm going to make a common thing to make everything automatically. Okay. Okay, so right now I'm going to insert name of each student, and I'm going to show, let's say student ID 1, this is the ID, and then a tab, and then I'm going to let the user to have the name as well. So array name, and what is it? I, and then end line. Okay, so this is the student ID for this name, for the student. And then that's the 0 index. At the second index, this is the student ID for the second student, and so on. So if I run the program right now, enter information for student number 1. So I will say Ahmed. For information student number 2, let's say Muhammad. And then let's say Sarah. And student number 4, let's say Aziz. And number 5, let's say what else I have? Let's say Sewa. Okay. So I have how many students? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 students. The first student's ID, the second student's ID, and third and fourth and fifth, and their names as well. So when I press enter, I see that the first student's ID is 1 and the name is Ahmed. The second is ID is 2 and the name is Muhammad, and so on. So I was able to provide the ID and the name of the students with a very little amount of time, and it is manageable. I can anytime change the value of any student if I wanted. How it didn't give me an error. Okay, so this is using 2 arrays and then outing 2 arrays. Okay. Okay.